Welcome back to the Deep Dive, brought to you today by the Rosary Team Podcast. We are opening the files today on a really pivotal figure in world history.
A truly pivotal figure.
A monarch whose influence just spanned continents and whose life story is still, well, centuries later, right at the center of some big debates about faith and power.
It's a profound subject. Today, we are focusing on Isabella III of Castile.
Yeah.
She's one of the most consequential women ever to sit on a European throne.
Right.
And she wasn't just a political figure. The sources we have, they present her as this visionary, a reformer, and a deeply, deeply devout woman whose actions shaped Spain and, fundamentally altered the course of the Americas.
So our mission today is a real deep dive into all of that, her historical, political, and her spiritual legacy. We want to focus on the material about her faith, her huge role in evangelization, and the ongoing cause for her beatification.
When we talk about Isabella first, we're really talking about her reign from 1474 to 1504. When she married Ferdinand II of Aragon, they achieved something. Well, something few monarchs ever do. They united Spain.
They brought it fully under the banner of the Catholic Church.
Exactly. And this devotion, it was recognized officially. The Pope himself honored them with the title, the Catholic Monarchs of Europe.
That title alone tells you so much, doesn't it?
It tells you everything. It shows how faith and statecraft were completely inseparable in her time.
And when you look at how her supporters see her today, she's presented as so much more than just a successful queen.
Oh, absolutely.
The devotional materials hold her up as this towering spiritual figure. She's described as a model for young ladies, wives, mothers, women leaders, and government rulers.
Indeed. The prayer that seeks her canonization, it defines her character by asking that she be seen as having a heart of piety, justice, compassion, and the vision of a new land full of promise.
That sets an extraordinarily high bar.
It really does.
Yeah.
It combines the demands of a sovereign with the demands of a saint.
So let's unpack that a bit. This blend of faith and rule. Where do we start? Maybe with her domestic policy.
That's the perfect place. The sources emphasize that her governing philosophy was just fundamentally faith-driven. They call her a studiosa Christi femina.
A woman devoted to Christ.
And zealous in her pursuit of the faith. And that zeal, it translated directly into state policy. One of the most defining acts of her early reign was the war to recover Granada.
Which was this long, drawn-out conflict.
It was. And when it was finally successful, it was seen not just as a territorial victory, but a spiritual one. It returned the territory to the Christian religion after, 700 years of Muslim domination?
And it's important to look at the records that kind of humanize this campaign, right? It wasn't just a conflict.
No. The sources really highlight her personal charity during the war. She ordered the building of hospitals, she provided clothing for captives, and she made sure her troops were always supplied.
So it's this specific blend of military fortitude and an active compassion that her supporters point to as evidence of her virtue.
And that's a crucial point for the beatification cause.
Why is that?
Because it argues that even in the most severe political conflict, she maintained her Christian virtues.
Okay, so if Granada defined her domestic mission, then the expansion across the Atlantic, that defined her global legacy. The sources call her the first sovereign of the American continent.
And that is the geopolitical claim that just changes everything.
Yeah.
It signifies that the goal of the voyages she was funding, it wasn't purely economic. It was about the systematic expansion of the Christian faith.
Beyond Spain's borders.
Way beyond. And we see this focus immediately. Even before Columbus, there was the incorporation of the Canary Islands, Fortunatus Insulis.
And the sources stress that, 50,000 inhabitants there who previously knew nothing of Christ were brought into the faith under her.
Right. And that really set the template for the much more consequential voyages to the distant Insulas Atlanticus, what we now know as Hispaniola and the Greater Antilles.
What's so insightful there is the speed.
The speed with which she institutionalized the faith in these new territories.
Yeah.
Her commitment was just immediate.
So you're not just talking about sending a few missionaries over on a boat.
No. We are talking about permanent institutional structures. Isabella was instrumental in establishing the first ecclesiastical presence in the New World. She founded 9 cathedral churches.
9.
9. Which is effectively 3 dioceses apud insulis indicus. This wasn't just exploration. This was laying the foundation for an entire civilization based on the Spanish model.
And her supporters often bring up her role as a defender of the indigenous peoples in this process. How does the source material actually back that up?
Well, it focuses on her intention. Her intention to treat the American Indian peoples as real subjects of the crown, not chattel or property.
So she sought to protect their rights while also working toward their conversion.
That's the argument, yes.
Yes.
That she genuinely cared for their welfare and status, despite the devastating events that followed later. And this advocacy, it's a primary pillar of the modern movement for her sainthood.
It's clear she had this huge macro-level vision for evangelization, from Granada to the Caribbean.
A massive vision.
But what's really remarkable is how that public zeal was matched by these intimate, personal acts of devotion centered on the Holy Land.
This really shows the depth of her commitment. She dedicated herself to the restoration of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. She used her political clout, writing directly to the Sultan of Egypt, demanding they not hinder the work.
And the level of personal sacrifice in her donations is it's incredible. We know about the big things, like the golden curtains of great price she sent for the chapel.
But it's the personal touch, just like you said, that really sticks with you. The records say that while she was pregnant, she personally wove 4 very fine linen sheets.
Wove them herself.
Wove them herself to cover the slab that held the body of our Lord. To imagine one of the most powerful women in the world taking the time while expecting a child to do this, it highlights that she saw her role as a spiritual vocation.
Not just a political office.
Exactly. And it underscores the source's claim that her commitment was both politically significant. She sent 1,000 gold ducats to the Franciscans there every year, and profoundly intimate. And it's this reputation for heroic piety that keeps the cause for her canonization alive today.
So let's turn to that modern movement then. She's already officially recognized as Servant of God, Queen Isabel.
Correct. And the goal of her supporters is, well, it's ambitious. They want to see God's infinite majesty glorified in her prompt canonization.
This has been a really long process, though. Where does the effort stand right now, canonically?
The initial file actually dates all the way back to 1972.
Wow.
But it stalled for decades. The Archdiocese of Valladolid just recently revived the cause before March 2024. And what's significant is that the movement has broad national support in Spain. In 2018, the bishops of Granada and Sevilla unanimously approved reopening the process.
So there's a real committed, organized effort to see this through.
Absolutely.
So when her supporters present the case to the Vatican, what are the central arguments they're making?
They focus on a few key areas. First, her heroic virtues and what they call her authentic mystical life, this idea that she had true holiness alongside real political talent.
Okay.
Second, her zeal for justice, and especially her proactive advocacy for the Native Americans. They argue she spent her last years focused on ensuring their fair treatment. And third, they argue that the work of serious historians is helping to counter what's often called the Black Legend.
That's a term we should probably pause on. For anyone listening who's not familiar, what is the Black Legend?
The Black Legend refers to a specific narrative, largely non-Spanish, that came about after her death. It depicted Spanish colonization and the monarchs themselves as uniquely cruel and tyrannical.
So countering that is crucial for her canonization.
It's essential. Her proponents argue that the historical facts, like her defense of the Indians, show that while her policies were, of her time, her personal intentions were heroic and aimed at justice.
That distinction, though, intention versus consequence, that seems to be the core difficulty here, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The path to sainthood for a figure who operated at this level of political power is, well, it's inherently complex. The sources clearly point out the hurdles. In early 2024, the dicastery for the causes of saints suggested that completing the process was almost impossible in the short term.
And the specific difficulty that always comes up is that one action from 1492.
Correct. The primary historical obstacle is a decree she issued that year, which ordered Jews who refused to convert to Catholicism to leave the kingdom.
And that action has these deep, long-lasting implications that the Holy See has to grapple with.
Right. Can such a decisive, exclusionary political act align with the definition of heroic virtue needed for sainthood? That's the question.
And what's fascinating is that the sources indicate the cause is being influenced by current geopolitical tensions.
It shows that sainthood is never a purely historical exercise. The sources confirm the Secretary of State may have decided to freeze the file because of the deterioration of relations between Israel and the Vatican.
So global politics can actually impact a historical evaluation like this.
It absolutely can. But despite these huge hurdles, both historical and geopolitical, the movement is incredibly determined.
They're not slowing down.
Not at all. In fact, a delegation led by José Luis Rubio Willen, the director of the commission, went to the Vatican in February 2024. They presented new proceedings specifically on the theme Isabel the Catholic and the Evangelization of America.
So they're doubling down on her work in the New World.
That's their focus. They're trying to strengthen the evidence of her profound influence in establishing the faith there.
That drive, that focus, is what defines the community of her supporters today. And for those of you listening who find inspiration in her life or are praying for her intercession, supporters pray regularly to the servant of God, Queen Isabel.
And if you are blessed to obtain a favor through her intercession, you are encouraged to inform the Comité Reina Isabel. That address is P.O. Box 268237, Chicago, IL 606268237 in the U.S.
And remember, you can delve deeper into all the resources, prayers, and the community surrounding this cause by visiting rosaryteam.com. Now, let's zoom out from the current process and look at how her status was cemented right after her death in 1504. The funeral wasn't just a farewell, was it?
Not at all. It was a carefully constructed piece of political propaganda.
Really?
That's exactly right. The funeral, held in Rome in 1505, was staged during an extremely vulnerable time for Spain. There was international tension, succession unrest. Ferdinand needed to project stability and power.
Through his late wife's sanctity.
Precisely. So the ceremony itself had to be spectacular to meet that political need. The structure they built, the Castrum Dolores, or Castle of Sorrow, was described as having greater elegance than the monuments for popes or cardinals.
So it was a conscious hybrid of styles.
A perfect summary is miseria italiana e ceremoniosa alla spagnola. Italian pathos married with Spanish magnificence. It was a show of force dressed in mourning.
What were some of the visual details that communicated that power?
The structure itself was striking. A slender baldachin designed to look like a palace, with 5 turrets, emphasizing the royal lineage. The colors, too, were symbolic. Black velvet for mourning, of course, but the interior was lined with her emblematic green.
Green for?
Youth and hope, suggesting her death wasn't an ending, but a transition to a unified future.
And the cenotaphium, the fictitious coffin at the center, what message did that carry?
It was covered in luxurious golden cloth and green brocade, affirming her wealth and status, with a cross embroidered on top. But the real genius was in the epigraphy, the inscriptions.
These were basically public declarations about her status.
They were. They amounted to a poetic canonization. The central inscription read, Diva Elizabeth, Regia Catholica, Pletissima, Clementissima, Semper Augusta.
Diva Elizabeth.
Exactly. Using diva immediately connected her to this classical idea of a divinely sanctioned ruler. It emphasized her political might and her religious excellence.
And they even used the architecture to project Spain's future power.
Absolutely. They didn't just display the arms of Castile and Aragon. They strategically mixed in the arms of her descendants' kingdoms, Portugal, Austria-Burgundy.
A clear visual
A
statement.
very clear statement. Isabella's legacy is the foundation of a vast, powerful Christian Europe. Even the biblical language was used politically. Inscriptions like surrexit and non estic, he is risen, he is not here.
A reference to Christ's resurrection.
Right. It wasn't just a sign of mourning, it was a theological stamp of approval, announcing her own spiritual salvation and reinforcing the idea of royal immortality.
It's incredible how much political weight that one ceremony carried. And that glorification still endures today, doesn't it? It connects that historical event to modern devotional art.
It highlights that the admiration for Queen Isabella is a continuous tradition. It's not just a historical footnote.
We see her memorialized in so many forms that still blend that royalty and spirituality. Supporters have these Baroque-style icons printed on high-quality wooden plaques.
Often, FSC-certified birchwood, which lets the natural grain show through. It gives it a kind of rustic, tangible feel.
And the images are always crowned with a golden diadem and a radiant halo.
And then you have the more modern devotional items, like icons printed on brushed aluminum. It's a sleek, contemporary look with a lot of depth and texture.
That material has a unique property, right? Where white would normally be, you get this metallic silver shine.
Exactly. They serve as these durable, daily reminders of her legacy, whether it's for a home altar or, just in an office.
So from a 5-turreted, highly political catafalque in 16th century Rome to a sleek metallic icon on a modern desk, the effort remains the same.
To immortalize the spiritual and political power of Isabella the Catholic for the faithful. That's the perfect synthesis. Her legacy, this powerful intertwining of profound personal faith, immense political power, and a fervent vision for evangelization, it continues to be actively debated and revered centuries later.
And as we've explored, the cause for her canonization is still very much a live issue.
Alive, if deeply complex, issue.
Yeah.
Yes. And despite the difficulties noted by the Holy See issues tied to the 1492 decree and recent tensions, the work of serious historians revealing her authentic mystical life and her advocacy for Native Americans highlights this complex reality.
So the provocative thought for the listener.
The core question for you to consider is this: how do we weigh the heroic virtues of a sovereign's personal faith against the difficult and sometimes divisive political actions that were deemed necessary in her time?
A profound challenge to consider. If you want to delve into the resources, devotions, and the community we discussed today, please visit rosaryteam.com.
Thank you for listening to the Rosary Team Podcast.